Welcome in, everybody, to Inside the Borough. We are back, a dub edition. It was a weekend full of W's across the board. Robbie Listella, Garen Bach here with you to recap it all. Garen, welcome back. You were with me at football. That was a trifecta night. FAU football got the dub. Women's basketball got the dub. Men's basketball got the dub. A night full of winning. But how's it going, Garen?
I'm doing great. You're right. Saturday was a phenomenal night for all Owl fans. Amazing. You know, you get the win in football, and then basketball carries right over, and then there's the women's basketball team right there to cap it all off. In my opinion, probably the craziest aspect of the night was the women's basketball, thanks to that essential buzzer beater. But all in all, Saturday was a great day to be an Owl.
100%. Football, we were all there. If you weren't there, you're a loser. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure everyone had stuff going on. But nevertheless, it was a good game. FAU got it done. It was a bounce back across the board, in my opinion. Won't dive too, we're not going to go play by play here with it. It's crazy how time flies. It feels like yesterday, but it's already Tuesday as we're recording this. But you'll see this on Wednesday. But nevertheless, a big win out of the bye for sure. As I mentioned, bounce back on all sides of the ball. Offensively, after a couple of weeks where they really, really struggled to capitalize. I think it was, I forgot the specific, but it was multiple drives back-to-back weeks where they weren't able to go without a touchdown. This week they scored a touchdown on over 50, or they score points on over 50% of their drives, which that's exactly what the Zach Kitley offense is. It's all about points. Doesn't matter how you get it done, right? Run game got going a little bit, which I thought was big. Even though we weren't rushing for 200 yards here. A 50-yard run from KSD, a 27-yarder, a 6-yarder, things were going. Last couple of weeks, they weren't going at all. So I think the complementary run game mixed with the pass game without any turnovers really led for a successful day offensively. And on the defensive side of the ball, I really think Tulsa struggled, and I think that was credit to a pass rush, which was aggressive. Shout out to Sean Batiste and Josh Roberts. I think really they had big games on the line, and turnovers, right? We hadn't seen many of those except a couple fumble recoveries here and there. So interception on the first drive of the game, I was like, this is homecoming football, Garen. And then it carried all the way through. So big win in the nice uniforms, honoring the 25th anniversary. And shout out to Ken Levicka pointing this out. That was the first, the longest recovery for a touchdown, 96 yards for Demarius McGee, or changed actually to 95, but still second longest in program history. And the first was back in 2001. Katrina mentioned this after the game, but I had forgotten about it. But Ken said it was the first win. I didn't pick up on that after the game if Katrina said that. Nevertheless, first win. That was in 2001 in that game. So, and honoring the 25th anniversary, I thought that was a cool little nugget Ken picked up on. So yeah, shout out to both sides of the ball. Garen, what did you see out there?
If you want to talk about vintage, this is what it was. You have the throwback unis. That stat you mentioned, that Ken mentioned, I wrote it in my article. I was like, you know what, this is perfect. You want to talk about summarizing a game, just look at that fumble recovery for a touchdown. You can go, this is what the Owls are made off of their first game, and we see it now when they're honoring their past and their tradition. Homecoming weekend, it was exciting. You could tell that there was a buzz around the football team locker room. But the biggest takeaway for me, I have to agree with you, was finally we get an interception. And it was the first drive of the game, because something that was mentioned and something that I took a little note of was Trey Lamb mentioned in his weekly presser last week was the turnover ratio for the Owls. And because I believe it was one of, if not the worst in the country. And he brought that up and with the Owls and us doing that, what they are saying every single week, we get to hear what the head coach says. But he was one of the first ones to actually talk about it, and you see it finally, go into the Owls' defensive way. But I also want to mention the importance of whenever those big plays happen. We saw a swing for that 95-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown that kind of pushed the momentum forward towards the end of the first half. And then immediately at the end of the first half, thanks to the interception we have at the end of the first, you have 2 touchdowns in less than a minute to close out the half. That was something that I was looking at and I was very excited about because this is a team that whenever momentum can be there, they fail to grab it at times. Now we saw it there in the third quarter. Robbie, you and I have talked about it. Sadly, we weren't sitting next to each other as we typically have been. But I think we can both agree on this that there's still some things that we want to see better. But I believe, as Coach Kitley said, this was probably the best overall team performance they had all year. And it's because you can point to the defense. We saw in the Navy game that the defense was able to come up and the offense couldn't execute. But this time we saw both sides of the ball execute, especially in the first half. And if they can keep having performances regardless against anybody in the first half, I really think that's a good sign for possibly making a bowl game at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's a big win out of the bye, right? It sets a lot of momentum. I think I mentioned this. That's why I asked for Alex Akovich after the game. I think his presence, whether that's on the field, in the locker room, I think it's big, right? Not a ton of returners from last year. Jay-Sean Platt has really stepped up and been a leader on and off the field. I think if they did redid captains at this point, I think he definitely, give some people a run for their money with the way he's kind of stepped up as a leader. But nevertheless, Alex coming back this week, I think really gave a spark as well on the especially in the run game at times. I think the way they shuffled the lineup gave Scarlett the reps at tackle there, and I think him and Alex worked really well together over there, and that's really a big jolt. And overall momentum, obviously, out of the win is big. Now they got to find a way to translate some of these things, right? That run game that they were able to generate big plays with. It wasn't a big volume type of day. So now, I think against Tulane, they're going to have to find a way to increase that volume. Other things, they got to find a way to replicate that pass rush. Tulane is going to have a much better offensive line than Tulsa had. But if, they don't, you're not always going to get home. You're not always going to walk away with a multi-sack performance like you did against Tulsa. But you can definitely pressure a quarterback, and Retzloff's going to hurt him with their legs for sure. But still, frustrating him back there is definitely is definitely something that could slow him down, especially when they do drop back to pass with him. Now, diving obviously into Tulane a little bit more. You mentioned it, this type of performance out of Tulsa is something that could give this team a jolt. I think, Tulane is going to be a game where that kind of leans on some of the struggles we saw early in the season, especially with a mobile quarterback. And their defense especially does a lot of different things in the secondary, which gave them trouble against USF. And so this game to me is going to have, if they're real, like you mentioned, this game could give them enough momentum to get to a bowl. This game is going to be a type of game where they're going to have to show those struggles that happened early in the season, whether it's turnovers, whether it's inability to stretch the field against a defense that disguises a lot of different things, whether it's, struggling to contain a mobile quarterback. You're not going to be perfect. Things will happen. Retzloff's a good quarterback. He's going to get a good run in there for 20-something yards. But the thing is, they can't let that, consistently come back to bite them. Another thing is turnovers. I think, or penalties, excuse me. I think Tulsa was one of the best games of the year because they were not bit by the penalty bug that much in dire situations. I feel like every single week we talked about, oh my goodness, there's a penalty that's just brutal. This game, I feel like, was one of the first times where we're sitting there after the game and penalties are not a conversation. And I think that's a really, really, really good thing out of the bye week. I think, last thing before last note on the Tulsa game is I think this team really showed adjustments. They showed the ability to really come out of a bye and do different things to get a jolt going after 2 tough performances against USF and Navy. But now this game against Tulane is going to have to be this first game of the year where you really come out to play against a good team. They had some, flashes against Memphis. They were within 8 for a while there against Navy, but neither time they were able to really pull it home. And I don't know if they're going to go in there and beat Tulane, but I don't want to see this game get away from them in the fourth quarter like big games have gotten. Whatever happens in this game, we'll dive into what told this game specifically, but big picture, they have to show that they can compete against a really talented football team for the entire game. We know this team can compete at times, but the whole 4 quarters against a talented football team, against I want every team's talented against a top tier football team. They haven't had that yet, and so this is that first game where if they're going to get to 6 wins, they're going to have to put it together for 4 quarters against a really good football team, whether that's Tulane, ECU, or UConn. All 3 well-coached are playing to that ability. So, Garen, what do you think about Tulane overall in this matchup?
Well, one, homecoming, sold out. Tulane Stadium. This is one of those things where you're going into an environment and this could possibly be the hardest environment you play in all season. Now South Florida, give them credit. The lower bowl looked great in that game. Sorry, I'm just going to throw in my South Florida hate when I can. But Tulane is a team that we have known year in, year out can be a team that is not a contender in the American, but a contender for college football playoff spot, especially recently. And whenever I look at them, as you mentioned earlier, my biggest concern is when you face a mobile quarterback. And that's something that we talked about whenever I was on with you after the South Florida game. Jake Retzloff, the transfer BYU, big name. We all knew he'd be a big portal get for whoever he went to, and that was Tulane, luckily for them. He's been great. He's their leading rusher, if that tells you anything right now. He's got an arm on him. He's able to make those quick reads, quick decisions, and this is where I believe if Florida Atlantic's going to stay in this one, as you mentioned, for a game, I think that we can look at 2 things. We saw what Zach Gibson did last week to be able to pull away whenever he came in that moment to finally put the nail in the coffin and basically end the game on that big drive he had. Sorry about that, with Messer scoring the touchdown. And that's a feeling where you can look offensively and go, we know how it is to pull away. Tulane's going to have those moments. I strongly believe we're going to get into about the 3rd quarter whenever you're going to start to see Florida Atlantic have that make or break moment where it might be a 3rd and short, 4th and short. Tulane's going to go for it, and it might be a 2-score game in that moment. And if the Green Wave's able to get that first down, it'll be there. And that's whenever you're going to have a major reliance on your linebacker core, because if Jake Retzloff is able to get going, it's either going to be on Stolsky or Hart, in my opinion, for those 2. Stolsky's looked great, but we saw that. I believe he went down twice last week. I hope he's healthy with what's going on. I'm not too sure for this game, but I really think this is one of those games that you have to contain the quarterback, and the rest of it, if you play and you execute to the best of your ability, it might be able to take care of itself. I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't expect us to stay truly competitive all the way through 4 quarters. I just haven't seen it yet this season. But if we do see it, it will be because you're able to contain Jake Retzloff in this one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough. Even, whether it's been option-based offenses or not, they've struggled to contain the quarterback. And, we heard about it today on the offensive side of things for FAU. If Caden's not 100%, I think things go from dicey to grim at best. Now, credit to Zach Gibson for one of the best backup spot moments I've seen in FAU in a while. Thankfully, quarterback injuries mid-game are something that, outside of Casey Thompson have been kind of few and far between. So that's not something we've had to have seen a lot, but still 2 of 2 for 39 yards, and one of them is a flea flicker on 4th down and 1. That's impressive. That is having huevos, so some people like to say. And so I think, that to me is a reflection of really good coaching, in my opinion. And, to have the trust in your backup, first of all, to run that flea flicker. That's just Zach Kitley. That's they could go in there with the punter only, and that's what he's calling. But for him to be able
I'm
to,
sorry to interject, but we heard what he said in his post game presser, where he basically said, "I'm running this play regardless of who's in," and he wanted to do it.
Right. And I think the way they are able to execute that, backup quarterback in the game, cadence a little bit different, key moment, offense has been scuffling, 4th and 1. If Tulsa gets the ball back there, that game is over. And they execute it. So the execution with a backup quarterback on a play like that, to me, that stands out. And I, got to give credit where credit's due. So shout out to everyone there in that prepared moment. And although that did occur, and that that is very impressive and everything I just mentioned. Nevertheless, a backup quarterback against Tulane, not ideal. That's so very, very hopeful that Caden's able to go this week. Prayers up there, and hopefully he's able to as he mentioned, he's a Toradol supporter. He's going to play through the pain and use legal ways to try to get onto the field there. And so I think if he's ready to, if he feels like he's ready to go, he'll play. If he doesn't, then I don't think he will. I don't think he's the type of guy who will push to the point where he re-injures that. We heard that after the game, right? I think he said, he's confident in Zach and he's not going to overdo it. And I think that's the right approach to have. He's not doing anyone a disservice if he goes out there with one arm. So hopefully that's not the case and we see him this weekend. I think that would be detrimental, very, very bad if he's out. We could talk about the defense, the offense, the special teams, whatever you want to talk about. But if Caden's out, goes from, like I said, dicey to grim.
And the thing that's very intriguing to me about that is you look at the moment that Tulane is in right now. Like I mentioned, they're in the middle of a push for a conference championship spot, if not a conference title. While Florida Atlantic, they can still drop a game and still have an opportunity at a bowl game. So, Robbie, you could look at this situation and we can always just maybe try to make up our own minds, come up with our own thoughts. But you could look at this and go, you know what? It's homecoming. We're going to give it our best shot. But, hey, we still have 2 home games to be able to get to where we want to in our season.
Yeah, and they definitely showed that they've come out here and diced it up into this final season, as some coaches like to do. They look like they came out of that bye with a new sense of energy. But like we both have said a couple segments ago, they have not showed they can beat or stay competitive or beat a team, a high level team for 4 quarters. Has to happen this week. They don't have to beat them. I mean, obviously gonna have to get 2 out of these 3 if you want one now, but you don't want to have to play with your backs against the wall. But at least show you're competitive, and I think that's the most important thing for me this week. Their run defense isn't the best. It's good, but it's not the best, and their passing defense is not the best. Although neither was USF's, and as I mentioned, as everyone saw, didn't go too well against them. So comparisons not really the thing, but for Tulsa, they've struggled at times on defense. Their strength is winning games, and they find ways to do it. That's John Summerall. He's a good ball coach. I think FAU's got a good ball coach in their own, and I think if they're able to get a run game going, if they're able to kind of find a way to contain Jake Retzlaff, there's a chance in this game. We don't do predictions on Inside the Borough. But if they're able to do those things, they've got a shot. I do think they've got a shot to at least, keep things competitive. We've seen them keep it competitive against top teams in this conference, just not for 4 quarters. Is this the week where that happens? We'll see. Find out this weekend, Saturday. Go to the Big Easy. I've been up there for basketball. I'm not actually making it up there for football this weekend, but highly recommend it. Stay in downtown New Orleans and take the trolley. They got a trolley that goes from downtown New Orleans over campus. So, if you're up there, if you're in the area, if you want to go, don't fly. I don't recommend that, but find a way to get there. Support the Owls on the road. Shout out to all the fans who do. Speaking of road. Speaking of games, Owls men's basketball, Garen. They went. Let's talk. We talked about Boston College with Kevin Fielder last week, but 2-1 after a 3-game stretch to start the season, where you're playing 3 teams. You're playing an ACC team. You're playing 2 high-level mid-majors in Charleston and Liberty. You come out of that 2-1. My light keeps falling here, but you come out of that 2-1. Not too bad, you lose to Liberty out of those 3, and that's the NCAA tournament team from last year. So, best case scenario, you walked out of it 3-0 with a win over a tournament team from last year, and then all of a sudden, but you lose that game. That's all right. That's an early season bump in the road, but you come out of that tough stretch 3-1. Garen, what have you liked from basketball so far? I know you weren't covering it last year. I don't know, how much you saw, but what have you liked from this team this year?
Well, obviously, you mentioned Boston College. That was my first men's basketball game as a student, so that was awesome just to be a part of. I probably should have gone to one last year. That's on me, but you know what? I made it to one. Now, on the road, like you mentioned, something I had looked at when I first looked at the schedule is I felt as if you could make it out of these first 3 games 2-1, regardless of which way you cut it, you felt pretty good. And that's something that I've really thought about, was that this is a Charleston team, and that we mentioned that I know was talked about a lot last year, and then the Liberty team talked about a lot. Now, that loss to Liberty, 20 points, you don't really want a 20-point loss really ever, but for it to be against Liberty, they seem to just be lights out. Our offense has been good in the first 2 games, I would say. Now production when it comes to near the rim has been poor, especially I'll just say over the first 3 games it could be a lot better. But my biggest concern was the perimeter defense coming into this season, and I think the Liberty game, when you're going up against that good of a team, you kind of just go like, you know what, they're just on today, because that's what it seemed like when I just watching from the house. They just seemed on. Just one of those games where you walk into the gym and a team's just hotter than you, and that sometimes happens.
Yeah, you know what? Credit to Liberty. Really credit to Liberty. First of all, shout out to Coach McKay, Richie McKay, who led post-game prayer. That's a tradition there at Liberty. So shout out to everyone who was a part of that. I thought that was pretty cool, despite, you go to battle and then you put that aside. So that was a really cool moment. But yeah, shout out to Liberty on the court as well. They were able to retain. They got some money. We're making it sound like they're a church league, but they got some money to go with that as well. And they've used it in the right way, retaining 3 of their top guards, or 2 of their top guards, and Zach Cleveland, who I believe is a forward. But when you retain 3 of your top level players in an environment where you have a elite coach and leader, in my opinion, like Richie McKay, I don't know how he's still there. That's college basketball. He's found a fit. I don't know if he's ever tried to leave, but nevertheless, they've been able to retain those guys and build. And here they are. They lost to Oregon in the NCAA tournament last year. Didn't matter. Those guys still came back. There's more work to do, and it showed what they're able to do on the court. So credit to everyone, really. I was really blown away playing them. I didn't know too much about Liberty. We've played them 3 times in the last 3 years. I've gotten to know a couple people that around that fan base, and people give them some flack sometimes on social media for things that have gone on in the past. I've been guilty of that at times, but I think they've got some good programs, and I think basketball for them really is definitely taking an uptick. Now, enough talk about Liberty. I've given them enough credit, and I think John Jacobs did the same thing in the post-game press conference. He gave him some credit, and then he stopped. When I asked especially about the lack of assists in that game. Only 7 assists for FAU in that loss to Liberty. I think that's something we haven't seen from a John Jacobs-led team at all. We've seen it a couple times, but when that happens, they lose. And that reminds me of the Drake game last year. Drake did whatever they want offensively, and they stymied FAU's offense. And no credit to Liberty, as John Jacobs said on that. It was their own fault. They didn't pass enough, and it led, when the shots weren't falling, the offense kind of stalled. Mm-hmm. Liberty was able to use that to take a big advantage. So that can't happen. They got that. That's not a typical problem when John Jacobs knows they need to address that. You mentioned the 3-point defense. After 3 games, FAU 298th in the country out of 365 teams. Actually 363. Rest in peace the St. Francis's of the world, who have now no longer a part of Division I. It's 364. 364, I think it is. But nevertheless, FAU 40.3% allowed 3-point percentage. That's probably their worst statistic on either side of the ball. That was an issue that plagued them last year. And they were also 265th in forcing a turnover percentage-wise. They forced one 14.9% of the time. So defensively, definitely some work to do. But like you said, 3 games, 2-1, all high-level teams. Not bad. You got a gimme game coming up, Coastal Georgia. Please have it be a gimme game. I love me some Hawaii Pacific basketball. I don't want that to happen to Florida Atlantic. I think that would be very detrimental, although it would be another cool story. But no, FAU's got to handle business against Coastal Georgia on Monday. Be there. Although it's a Monday night, I think that's a game where we can see this team really show some flashes. You can get a good look at this team. So come out, as John Jacobs likes to say, and come out and see a team that's performing well early in the season. And then Thursday, you got Pacific at home as well. Another chance to that's going to be potentially a good game. Pacific's been kind of iffy over the last couple of years, but early season chance for them to kind of set some momentum too. Play a team you don't really hear too much about over here on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And then all the way after that, they go up to Daytona, and they'll play Loyola Marymount up there. That'll close out their Sunshine Conference or their slate. It's a home game and a game up there. So we'll see how they kind of come out of those couple of games. I've really, in my opinion, those are all 3 games they should win, especially Coastal Georgia. So this is really a stretch where they should find themselves 5-1, and then they come back home and have a game against St. Bonaventure on November 30th. So that'll be a big game. That'll be the game that'll really kind of set some tone before they got to go play UCF St. Mary's down the stretch. So strong start to the non-con. I think player-wise, I think Johan Sissoko has really flashed. I think obviously Devin Vanderpool has really, really flashed. Both, he's doing everything, right? That reminds me of a lot of players of FAU of old. Michael Forrest, Brian Greenlee, Coach Greenlee. He's really doing it all. He put up 20 against Liberty, had 9 rebounds against Boston College. So shout out to Devin. And I've liked Xander Pintalon as well early. I think his ability to space the offense has been big. And yeah, Garen, anyone been a standout player to you so far here before we close out basketball conversation?
Well, I think the names you mentioned were ones that I was going to bring up. No. Yeah, but something for me that when I looked at the Liberty game and looked at the Charleston game, a big difference was you had mentioned the assist numbers. In the Charleston game, Florida Atlantic had 19 assists as a team and had 6 players in double digit in scoring. I think right there for me, someone who loves when that rock is getting shared with everybody. That's one of those moments where you can look at the differences and you can just go, this is just a day's difference, and you can tell exactly how playing against a very tough opponent can change your game. And I really think just to finish off your point with the month of November, this could be a very solid month for Florida Atlantic if they can just take care of business until the end of the month. And then, hey, you got all of the rest of the year in December to just do whatever you want and have some fun before conference play.
I don't know about that. I want some wins, Garen. I want to win on the road at St. Mary's. Come on.
Hey, that's the one I'm looking forward to the most. But listen, I'll wait for when that happens. But I will be seated. I will be seated.
No, I got you. Yeah, I feel like, there's definitely some hype here early season that, last year they had that early loss to UCF and everyone was kind of, it was tough expectations, right? You go from Final Four, you go to Sweet Six, or you go Final Four NCAA tournament, loss to UCF and non-con. Everyone's like, yeah. But that's life. So is life. Like, things change. But I think the encouraging sign is they've really been able to show they can flip a roster, which in today's college landscape is paramount. Mm-hmm. If you can't flip a roster, you have no shot. Players are going to leave every year no matter what you're doing. Unless you're Richie McKay and Liberty. I don't know. Whatever, when you're in an environment like that, it's tough to leave. But they've been able to flip the roster, come out competitive out of the gates in year 2 after getting the roster basically completely wiped, all your top players gone. And they've shown with a full offseason of time with their guys that they have had their own time to scout. I think that it's really shown like the benefits because they've come out of the gates ready to go. Now, some bumps in the road against Liberty. Got to get those cleaned up. Can't come out against Coastal Georgia and Pacific and LMU and have these same issues. Things will pop up. Got to fix them like we've seen with football. They've been able to do that. I think this staff for basketball has been real solid as well, and I think they'll fix issues on the fly. Case in point, although things didn't go their way against Liberty, they came out of the locker room first, I think 6 minutes or so. There was a stretch there where they held Liberty to without a point for about 3.5 minutes. For the way Liberty's offense was flowing, that's a sign that they came out with adjustments to kind of mess with Liberty's game plan a little bit. So credit where credit's due. Outcome, not what you like, but they're doing things. They're trying things. It's early season. So,
sure.
I think there's some hope. I think there's some hype. We'll see if they can kind of capitalize on this early season momentum. I call these next 3 games gimme games. Anything can happen. Master P and University of New Orleans just went into TCU and knocked them off. So it's college basketball. Don't let that be you, especially in December when they play FGCU. Please, I've said this a million times. Don't let that happen. But I hope they enjoy their bye week this week pretty much, and then they gotta get going. Big slate starts next Monday, so we'll see how they do. But it wasn't just men's basketball. It wasn't just football, Garen. As we mentioned in the opening, Coach Freeland on the road. Garen was covering almost every game last year in what was a disaster. Changes have been made, and so far so good. 2-0. Garen, what's your thoughts on FAU women's basketball?
Yeah, so obviously the FMU game was one of those, a gimme game, but in the world, but especially when you have your first year head coach, you're going to have those opening night jitters. It was close in the first, but they pulled away 189-46. And then Kennesaw State, was that buzzer beater 3. Well, essentially a buzzer beater 3 from Destin Jackson. And one of the things that was really important to me here that Robbie had mentioned to you right before the show as we were just getting everything set up was last year, this is a Kennesaw State team. Now, I will be completely open and honest with you. I do not follow the Owls of Kennesaw State, so I'm not sure if they've lost talent. Maybe you've got a new coach. But regardless, when you just look at that logo and a final score, last season in Boca Raton, it was a 15-point loss to that same Kennesaw State team. Now, next year, you go on the road, you earn the win. This is one of those moments where you can look at it early in the season and you're like, you know what? The Owls may have something to build upon. But just to keep in mind, at the beginning of last season, Florida Atlantic, they had to play Florida. They did have to play Florida in their opening game of the season. So I will go ahead and scratch that one off. But the Owls started out 3-1 last season. So, although very nice to see, I will say the win is something that when you write it down, it's the first win as an owl for Coach Freeland, but also the first road win for Coach Freeland. And road wins are hard to get, especially your first one. But the squad overall, a lot of turnover. I'm really excited just to see how this group looks because I don't really necessarily know if they're going to stick around or not. But all I do know is that this season should be a fun one. There should be a lot of fast tempo, up tempo scoring, and that's something I'm really looking forward to.
I don't know what they got in the water down there in Nova Southeastern, but man, they got, I mean, you producing coaches everywhere, left and right, men's and women's now. I mean, you look at it, they've got 4 girls scoring double figures. Grace Carstensen leading the way with 15 and a half a game. But I mean, that's impressive. They're putting up offense, and they did it on the road. That early season, really impressive stuff. And Nova Southeastern, they're a basketball powerhouse producing. And shout out to them for Coach Freeland and Coach Fee on the men's side. So excited to see what's coming. They got a big game this Thursday. If you're anywhere in the Boca Raton area this Thursday, or in the Miami area, excuse me, they are on the road taking on Miami, and so that'll be a big game. We just saw them win on the road against Kennesaw, different type of team in Miami. But shout out to Coach Freeland. We'll see if they can get it done. And then they play Florida at home next Monday. So some big games. Tune in. FAU women's basketball might become appointment television if you're not watching already.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have coverage for you when we have an available team member. Garen, you gonna try to get any out of games here before the end of the month? I think we got. Let's see if there's any good home games. Yeah, next Monday against Florida.
On the 24th, 2 Mondays. That Florida game. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, University of Tennessee. You know this. I've told you so. That hate for Florida runs deep in me, and I will always love to see Florida Atlantic take down an in-state Power 5 school, regardless of what sport. So I hope to be there for it. We'll see how it all works out, but I'm definitely excited for that one. But I also don't want you to overlook that South Alabama game. Another Group of 5 school there, and on the road, you would love to see the Owls get a win there as well.
Yeah, that'd be something. At that point, we might be talking about something. We'll see how they do when they get to conference play. But shout out to the early season juice from them. So yeah, and then obviously we're in the postseason hunt here for men's soccer. Big game coming up. Garen, tell us about it.
Yeah, so men's soccer obviously they've had a great season. They were co-champions of the American Conference. They were able to have the first round off, so they went straight ahead to the semifinals here. We had the coaching staff of the year in the American, had 5 players listed on the all-conference teams, and then we had Mamadou Diarra, back-to-back player of the years. All I'm saying is if you missed out on them in Boca, I'm sorry, but go ahead and sign up for that ESPN Plus subscription if you have not. And make sure you tune in tomorrow if you've got the time. Maybe sneak your laptop if you're in the office, 3 p.m., watch yourself some Florida Atlantic versus Tulsa. Tulsa 4-0-1 against the Owls. They have not lost to FAU. And this is one of those moments where you look at it, like, this is a turning point, because you also have to keep in mind, if Florida Atlantic can win this, they will make it to the championship for the first time, I believe, since 2022. And they will either be playing Florida International or Charlotte. And Charlotte, I believe they have won 3 straight American Conference titles. So this should be a really exciting next couple of days. And the championship game, if the Owls do make it, will be Saturday evening at 6 o'clock. So about halftime of the FAU Tulane game. You can go ahead and tune in to men's soccer and have that up on your laptop while you got the game up on your TV.
Go from football to football. Let's go. Come on.
We're here for it. We're here for it.
That'll be big. If they can do that, they rattle that off, get to the tournament. Start racking these up for Mr. Brian White. He's starting to make a powerhouse across the athletic department. I think that's what every athletic department head envisions. So hopefully we're rooting for him. And yeah, if you're where is the champ? Do you know where the championship game is? Is it host sites or is it?
Yes, it's the host shot. It's the host site. It's in Charlotte. It'll be where the 49ers play. So sadly, Florida Atlantic could not pull it out against Charlotte earlier this season. I believe they lost 1-0 or 2-0. Charlotte won that game, so sadly we couldn't have it down here. It would have been a blast to have it down here, but regardless, if you want to make it up there for some American Conference soccer, I'd make it. It should be pretty good.
I've only been to Charlotte one time. I don't have any recommendations like the trolley. I think there's a good coffee shop if you like coffee. It's called My Story Cafe. It's kind of right by the campus.
I only know NASCAR for me, so that's all I've got.
Right. Yeah. I've only been up there one time. Oh, well, there's no if the basketball arena is open, they've got a Bojangles in the arena. So that's a cool fun fact for you about Charlotte, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, can we get one in our stadium maybe? First Bojangles in the state of Florida in the Ellie? No. But yeah, shout out to all the teams across the athletic department. Big week last week, maybe another one upcoming. We'll see. FAU Tulane this weekend, some soccer going on, and women's basketball getting going on Thursday as well, big game against Miami. So we'll see. We got a lot to talk about next week. Be right here on Inside the Borough. We'll have it all for you. For Garrett Bach, I'm Robbie LaStella. We'll see you next time.